Last week, Ukrainian military leaders announced their plans to launch a new counteroffensive in the near future, although they did not specify the exact location of the intended attack. As time passed, Russian military blogs also began to report on Moscow's expectation of an impending assault. So, where might the Ukrainian offensive begin, and what are the chances of a success similar to last year's? In late summer 2022, when Kyiv announced a sweeping offensive around Kherson, many doubted the Ukrainian forces had the reserves needed to make significant territorial gains. However, it turned out that Kyiv had not planned the real counterattack in the southern region but in the northeastern part of the country, east of Kharkiv. The Kharkiv offensive caught Russian forces off guard, leading to a collapse in defense. Only after crossing the Oskil River could the retreating Russian troops mount significant resistance and halt the Ukrainian advance. By then, Kyiv had liberated most of Kharkiv province and even entered occupied Luhansk province. The surprise Kharkiv offensive was followed by another in the western part of Kherson province, where Ukrainian forces began pushing Russian troops towards the Dnieper River. Moscow did not wait for a total collapse in front lines and withdrew from areas west of the Dnieper, including the provincial center. They established new defensive positions on the eastern bank of the river. Since then, the front lines have solidified, with Russian forces attempting to capture territory in Donbass. While the situation in Bakhmut and Avdiivka is critical, no significant territorial gains can be reported at the moment. One possible attack route identified by the Russians is in Luhansk province in northern Ukraine. Ukrainian forces are in a favorable geographical position here, having crossed the significant barrier of the Oskil River last fall. However, Moscow is well aware of this advantage. The so-called Svatovo-Kreminna line, which stretches from the Russian border to Severodonetsk, has been significantly reinforced by Russian forces over the past few months. According to a recent rapid analysis by the UK Ministry of Defence, Russian forces are cautiously pushing Ukrainians back towards the western bank of the Oskil River. It is uncertain how deep the Russian forces have built their defenses behind the Svatovo-Kreminna line. During the fall phase of the war, the Ukrainians managed to reclaim vast territories because the Russians failed to establish effective defensive positions until they reached the Oskil River. Another significant issue for Kyiv on the Luhansk front is the limited territory available for advancement, even if they break through the potent Russian defenses. If they target the provincial center and Donetsk province, they risk being caught between Russian and separatist territories, which they cannot afford with their current manpower. As speculation surrounds Kiev's intentions in the ongoing conflict, many believe that the city's fanatical defense of Bakhmut aims to exhaust Russian defenders stationed between Severodonetsk and Donetsk before a major counteroffensive. Moscow has indeed suffered brutal losses in the area, but the extent of progress for Ukraine remains uncertain. Donetsk, one of Ukraine's largest cities, is located in a densely populated region that fell into Russian hands in 2014. In this challenging terrain, Ukrainian forces face limited manpower and difficult conditions, all while being painfully close to the Russian border. Recent reports suggest that Ukrainian troops are gathering around Orahiv in Zaporizhzhia, a region known for its close ties with Russian state media. Additionally, Ukrainian forces have been practicing amphibious operations extensively. These signs, along with President Volodymyr Zelensky's increasing mention of reclaiming Crimea, point towards a complex military operation aimed at liberating the southern part of Ukraine. The Russians have previously invested significant effort in fortifying their hold on Zaporizhzhia, as evidenced by bunkers and tank obstacles produced in Mariupol's cement factory and transported westward. In the event of a comprehensive attack, Ukrainian forces could rely on the element of surprise at the currently quiet Zaporizhzhia front. Russian forces would be forced to concentrate their troops around Tokmark, while simultaneously dealing with active battles in Bakhmut and Luhansk. A two-pronged attack, heading south from Orikhiv and incorporating amphibious operations along the southern Dnieper, could potentially disrupt Russian defenses. However, such an attack comes with massive risks, as amphibious vehicles make easy targets. The first sign of such an operation would likely be heavy artillery and rocket fire from Ukrainian forces on the eastern bank of the Dnieper. The exact location of a potential amphibious attack remains uncertain, with narrow points near Kherson being heavily fortified by Russian troops. Launching an offensive in Zaporizhzhia could split Russian forces between Donetsk and Kherson, placing the burden of supply on Crimea. This war may not end in 2023, and cutting off supply lines could be a significant advantage for Ukraine in a prolonged conflict. Ukrainian forces have proven adept at attacking supply lines, and the Crimean Peninsula is a vulnerable region, accessible from Russia via only one bridge and two narrow land strips from Ukraine. While Russian forces prepare for a potential amphibious attack on the peninsula itself, it is highly unlikely as Ukraine simply lacks the necessary watercraft for such an operation. The upcoming weeks will likely see Kiev launching an attack, but the direction and the effectiveness of their limited Western arsenal remain unclear. Moreover, questions linger over Russia's logistical capabilities, as previous offensives have shown Moscow's struggle to coordinate multi-front warfare. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads. We appreciate your support and hope to see you again soon.